We're in a time for war. We need to recognize that. We need to mobilize. We need to get ready. I'm talking to law enforcement, talking to people. One of the things I saw in a dream I had related to our Civil War was that militias would pop up like mushrooms, and it was God. These were good militias. We need to recognize the times. If God's people don't become a part of the militia movements, the good militia, the bad people will take them over. And we have so often abdicated territory to the enemy because we didn't want to get into something. Well, Jesus himself said, there's going to be a time when you need to sell your coat and buy a sword. Now, that was the physical weapon of their day. And we're in that time here. We need to realize that. What I also saw in my dream was the Lord had seeded our country with veterans from the Iraq War, Afghanistan, all these wars we've been in recently. Many who know how to fight in urban warfare are going to be a part of the leadership of these militias and help us in what's about to unfold in our own country. And these are going to be patriots. These are going to be those who are they know what the tyranny of Marxism is, and they've seen its evidence and the cruelty of some other ideologies and all that is out there. But they are going to be able to help give leadership to these militias that are popping up. And this was a God thing. He prepared us for this.
Hi, this is Ted. Today I'm going to be talking about Rick Joyner. Rick Joyner talks a lot lately about a war coming. I mean, a lot. And I decided to get to the bottom of what he really means. What kind of war are we facing? Why are we going to face this war? What is his thinking? Now, I know he believes that this war is coming because he has dreams, but I think it goes beyond that. You'll see. Rick Joyner believes America is special. He says, in fact, that America is not better than other countries, but God gave something very special to American founders, to the fathers who created the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. If you follow his teachings, you will discover that he really does, even though he doesn't want to say it, he believes that the founding fathers were given a covenant from God for something far surpassing any other covenant or any other kind of agreement between God and any other nation. Now, like I said, he doesn't say that word for word, but he implies it in a lot of different ways. Now, let's get into his history, his understanding of history, because it has a lot to do with why he believes there is a fantastic, huge war coming. There are different ways to read history. Right now, today, there seems to be this dialogue, a little bit of a butting heads about how to read history and what is a legitimate reading of history. And I think to illustrate this, I want to give you one passage from Columbus's journal back in October 1492. It appeared to me to be a race of people. He's talking about the American Indians. Very poor in everything. They go about naked as their mothers bore them, and so do the women, although I did not see more than one young girl. All I saw were youths, none of whom were more than 30 years of age. They were very well made, with very handsome bodies and very good countenances. Their hair is short and coarse, almost like the hairs of a horse's tail. They wear the hairs brought down to the eyebrows, except a few locks behind, which they wear long and never cut. They paint themselves black, and they're the color of canarians, neither black nor white. Now, a lot of history books. I had this group of people who met together back in the 1980s when I was a young pastor, and we got together and we talked about history. There were non-Christians and me as a pastor, and we'd all talk about American history. And one girl brought forward just what I just read to you. And she says, that was a really, and in the history book she was reading, she says, that was a very positive view of the American Indians. They're strong, they're handsome, they're very great countenances. And what she didn't see, because what that book did not tell her, and I've seen this in several different types of history books, what they did not say is what he continued to write in his journal. They should be good servants and intelligent, for I observed that they quickly took in what was said to them. And I believe that they would be easily made Christians, as it appeared to me they had no religion. These people are very simple as regards the use of arms, as your highnesses will, from the 7 that I caused to be taken, to bring home and learn their language. No, they will learn our language and return, unless your highnesses should order them all to be brought to the castle or to be kept as captives on the same island. For with 50 men, they can all be subjugated and made to do whatever is required of them. During our discussions, I was reading another book. They were reading, at least this girl was reading, a very popular American approved book. I read one, I had one as well that I was reading, and I saw differences, major differences between that and something that was a new phenomenon just taking place in the 80s. Howard Zinn wrote a book called The People's History of the United States of America. And in the People's book, what he did is most historians will study from on top, and they will study from each other. In other words, so-and-so says this, so-and-so says this, but they're not looking, not all, they're not looking at the original transcripts. They're not looking at the original writings. Very few do that. It's a lot more work. It's a lot easier to read what other historians say. And that was what was pretty much strongly done throughout the United States and with our history books. And Howard Zinn came along and he says, I want to look at this from a different angle. I want to look not from above, not from the point of view of the conqueror, not from the point of view of the wealthy, not from the point of view of the rulers. I want to write a history book from the point of view of the slaves, from those who were being overtaken, the point of view of those, the small people, from the point of view of regular people, the American Indians. And he wrote this book, and for that he did come under some attack. Why? Because it's a negative history of the United States. Because life in any age is not perfect. There are problems, and we as people and as groups do not always behave well. But you will see China trying to protect their image and their history. It's very common for groups to want to protect and keep their stories to serve the good. And to see that dark side is sometimes tough. Even in our own personal lives, you don't want to look at some of the dark sides, the dark things that you've done and fallen into in times past. But they're there. And, you need both sides. You need the one with the other. Don't cut out parts just because it doesn't fit. The reason I'm bringing this up, because Rick Joyner has his own history. When he reads history, and he does, I take back what I said in one of the videos I said about him, that he doesn't seem to have a real grasp of history. I think he has more learning in history than I gave him credit for. But he definitely sees through a certain colored glasses. And this is his history. There are two great awakenings that took place in this country. During awakenings, churches get full. During awakenings, people get spiritual. People get all on fire for the Lord. And it seems to go in waves. And his history, there are just two big awakenings that took place, the 1730s to the 1740s. But that awakening was intended by God to help bring about freedom. But because rulers just didn't get it and didn't follow along with what God was telling them and leading them to do, we had to have a war. The War of Independence, finally winning independence in 1776. So he believes that God has this great revival, and the revival ends with a war, because the war is necessary to do what God wants to get done in this country. Now, there's a different revival. It took place in the 1790s through 1800s. That's the second awakening, according to most historians. But I don't think that's where he's going, because that didn't have a huge war afterwards. I mean, America's got filled with wars. We fight wars constantly, either usually abroad, but sometimes at home. In the 1850s and the 1900s is a third awakening, which I believe is what he's calling the second great awakening, because for him to fit with his paradigm, he's got to have the revival and then the war. Well, there's two revivals that take place in between the War of Independence and the Civil War. And this was to bring freedom to the blacks and to others who were on the bottom of society. And because this likewise was not obeyed and followed by the rulers, we had to have the Civil War. Now, it's still not good. It's still not perfect, because we keep on moving away from the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So now, a new revival is taking place. And this revival is just beginning. I'm not sure where this is going. If he's following with the New Apostolic Reformation, and many in the New Apostolic Reformation, we could be facing the rise of the manifest sons of God. What's that? It's a Christian army who will rise and take control of this world. A Christian army armed with supernatural and miraculous strength. They can walk on water. They can transport. They can survive bullets and walk through nuclear weapons without being hurt. They can call fire from heaven in a moment. Gloria Copeland believes this. And she's preached this. She doesn't call it manifest sons of God, but she preaches it. So what is the solution? The balance of Republicans and Democrats is important. Not one, not both, but not one or the other, but both. But they need to return to the Constitution. Now, he says that, but he heavily leans on the Republican side. War is God's way of finishing what we don't through revival, as was mentioned. I took several classes from James Edwin Orr, who back in the 1980s, when I was with him, taking classes, late 70s, early 80s, James Edwin Orr was the world's foremost authority on awakenings, revivals. First of all, he comes up with more awakenings than just two. Secondly, he said, and by the way, I read several of his books, war actually kills revival. The revival of 1858 died just about because of the Civil War. Rick Joyner bases his theories on personal interpretation of history, as I've mentioned, but also on his dreams. Evidently, God's giving him, because he's an apostle appointed by super apostle C. Peter Wagner, because he's an apostle, he believes that his dreams, whether they're real or whether they're imaginary, his dreams are from God. And they're saying a war is coming. Now, today I'm just telling you what I know about his war. That's pretty much the gist of what Rick Joyner believes. I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but that's the basics. This is Ted. Have a good day.